Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing Podcast with your host, John Cass. Together, we'll take a closer look at the ins and outs of marketing through an Agile lens. You'll learn from interviews with top Agile thought leaders and practitioners and gain fresh new insights for your journey. Let's get ready to dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing with John Cass. I'm your host, John Cass, here in Boston, Massachusetts. Today, I'll be talking with Giannina Rachetta, Product Marketing Manager at 3M. Welcome, Giannina.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you doing? How are things going in the Agile Marketing land?
Oh, very well. Very well. Thank you.
Great. So today's podcast is a discussion about the basics of Agile marketing. This was your inspiration. What is the practice about, and how does Agile marketing help marketers address the issues that they face? So what are some of the themes that you think we should talk about?
That's right. Yes. I think going back to the basics is always good. So thank you for that opportunity for us to chat about this. I think some of the themes we want to discuss today definitely is the transparency of it all, the value to the customers, how Agile marketing, from the very basic methodology perspective, help marketers get to that, focus on getting things done fast. How it is also a mindset shift and a cultural shift. So yes, I'm very excited to discuss this today.
Yeah, I mean, you raised that point about culture and a change in culture. I think that's really very true, isn't it? I think when I've seen it being implemented, it really changes the way that people approach marketing, but not just the marketers. I think it's also, those stakeholders who see how marketing is working. It really changes for them. I mean, what's been your experience?
Yes, I mean, it was interesting when you're championing from the level of the person that really executes, that lives and breathes the marketing activities, and then kind of champion that up, as well as peer-to-peer. I think buy-in from leadership is crucial. And for the most part, I mean, it is, once, you delineate the methodology and what it is all about, then it's really a no-brainer. And I think maybe we can start with that, right? In the spirit of going back to the basics. What is Agile marketing? And as I mentioned, right, so as a methodology, I think it really gets marketers away from that traditional waterfall approach to a more succinct, adaptive, and iterative process. The cultural shift comes from, in my opinion, by using this methodology. It really addresses those constant fire drills that we are often working off of, or having too many priorities and not completing one, or just completing one and then feeling like you're always catching up and feeling like you can never get things done. That part is that mindset, right? That mindset shift of really, through the methodology, having a project and being able to work on small chunks of it that you can check as done and then show the work. Yeah, so that in my opinion, that's the very basic.
Yeah, I was just thinking that marketers often strive for perfection, although I hope we all understand that perfection's not really possible, but we do strive for it. We do strive for it. And I think actually Agile marketing gives marketers the opportunity to achieve that perfection more so than they usually do by, as you said, splitting it up into chunks. But I think also by having a discussion with stakeholders about what it takes to actually achieve perfection, and once they start having that discussion and being more open about, we've got a lot on our plate. We've got to, if you add one more thing, then it's going to topple the series of spinning plates that I have. And so to me, it's about doing really well and doing work really well, but it's also about being more willing to be open about how, in the end, you're going to fail if you don't talk about what you can do and what you can't do. And so you have to be able to say no sometimes. Mm-hmm. And once you start having that discussion with people, it means that they start to have a better understanding rather than just assuming, the marketer can always do everything.
Right. Yeah, we wish. We wish. I agree with you. Yeah, we strive for perfection, especially when we are working with large budgets and large productions. That all can be accomplished as long as we have that, again, through the methodology of agile marketing, that learning through validation over opinions and conventions, right? And having data to support that validation, right? And having small releases, just like the software side, right? The software side of Agile, that you have a large software product that you want to put out in the marketplace, and instead of waiting until it's all completely done and all the check marks are there, and then you release something that maybe you already perceive as old technology, or it's someone else is doing it faster than you and release something faster, then you can treat marketing in the same way, where you have a large campaign. Say you have, I don't know, like an event. Nowadays we are doing this virtually, right? So we have a virtual event and it takes many months to create and turn live. You can still be agile if you follow the methodology and just release a small portions of them, perhaps to control audience, or even internally with selected users, and just check the functionality and make sure that everything that you want, that it is working to what you want to do. So that learning process and adapting, it is something that we currently do in marketing as well, in not only longer efforts, but also smaller ones. I always say we're already doing agile marketing. We don't even know it.
I think what you talk about there is that it's not just a process for managing how you do marketing, but it's also a mechanism for improving how you manage innovation within marketing. I mean, marketing in some ways, I suppose, is all about innovation, but it's often, new ways of doing things constantly. There's, new mediums, and you have to grapple with that and figure it out. I mean, how many times have you read an article on a marketing magazine and or website and seen, and there's yet another social media technology or AI or something, and how you grapple with it. So that, I think that's the other aspect of agile marketing, which to me isn't sometimes as well implemented, but I think that's what it also offers as well. Marketers have these problems with process and talking with the other stakeholders, but they also, I think, have internal issues sometimes with focusing on just the campaigns and getting stuff done without saying, well, how can I make that better? And I think agile marketing pushes you on that, and that's really good in itself. So that's another aspect, I think, of how the methodology can help provide a solution.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, if someone that is not familiar with the concept of agile marketing, and they, hear all the great things we can do, so how do you do it? What is inside of the, this methodology that we keep talking about? And I always go back to, Scott Brinker's pillars and, basics, I guess, principles, I should say, of agile marketing that was developed a few years ago. But I always go back to that when I get asked that questions. So we look at the pillars as, individuals and interactions. And, how do you interact both externally and internally with your individual customers? So that is that, having the customer centered, and as a marketer, you're never going to hear a no from anybody when you say that your main mission is to understand your customer and provide remarkable experiences to them, right? So that is already a win. And you do that through individual interactions, internally and externally. I mentioned earlier testing on data, right? So testing is key to any data-driven marketing processes. And as I mentioned, we do it today, right? We do A/B testing. We do we send e-blasts to, two different audiences with slightly different messages. And then we say, okay, which one's working? That is a process that we can very well kind of insert in our agile marketing context. It is low risk. It lets you discover those interesting customer patterns What else is there? Numerous small experiments, right? So we do those little experiments, or we try a lot, and then we scale to the ones that succeed. So that goes along the lines of the testing aspect of agile marketing. And then finally, the collaborating with our customers, taking that VOC, that voice of customer, that all marketers, we strive to be closely in touch with our customers and always get their voice and bring them into our organization, taking that to the next level, right? Take that action, foster really the customer involvement, and nurturing the champions inside the organizations who we want them to advocate for our products, our solutions, and so forth. So I think that, at a very basic level, those type of principles that, delineates a lot of what we develop in agile marketing.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I mean, I think I encourage folks to go back and read Scott's articles on his blog, but also look at the Agile Marketing Manifesto, because it incorporates some of those ideas as well from the original Agile Manifesto. I mean, for me, I think the beauty of the methodology is that it gives marketers a little bit more time to spend on things like experimentation, because you've explained to everyone what you're doing and what you're focused on, and you also have a mechanism for handling the crocodiles that inevitably come down the pike.
That's right.
The CEO calls up and says, "Oh, I just saw this great new advertising place that we need to advertise here. Is that going to be in this sprint, or is it going to be in next one?" "Oh, well, that's right." And the CEO by that time understands that they have to work within a sprint, and so they stop doing that. So that
is right.
Well, that's the issue. It's I think that agile marketing, or agile for marketers, gives us the opportunity to have a much more open conversation with folks. And so as a result of which, you make those great points about the value, including the voice of the customer, doing the experimentation. But I think sometimes we can't do that as marketers because we're too busy bashing the crocodiles out of the way. But once we can train the crocodiles to go in the sprint and the right sprint, then all of a sudden we get more time to do the things that we do, well as marketers. And that's really the opportunity that it affords. It gives you a chance to have a breath, and especially for the team. I mean, I think that's what I found when I've worked with team members. They've come back to me and said, "John, this is a really great methodology, because now we're talking with the boss or the CEO or whatever, and they have a better understanding of what we're doing, and they're happy." But it means that we get more time as well.
That's right. Yeah, they understand, because through that methodology and the sprinting and then the ceremonies, you're able to show the work that you're doing. You have that transparency of having an open board, whether it's a manual or virtual. Nowadays, there's technology that allows us to do this from our homes, and anybody can see it, right? That's another one of the main cultural shifts that happen through this, implementing the manifestos, as you mentioned, right? We have that transparency of everybody can look at this and know at every point in time where are we in our efforts. What are the impediments that we have for any particular issue that our leadership can help us remove so that we can keep going? So that is a great benefit of implementing the methodology. And it is that mindset and cultural shift that happens because of it, right? And it's something that I've heard a few times, when people say, "Well, yes, that sounds nice, but, you're always going to have a fire drill that you have to pivot." Like, right now, COVID-19 was it's definitely a pivoting time, right? But you have the ability through agile marketing to make that change, to make changes in the priorities, because everybody understands that you're working on what you're working on through your backlog and your active sprint items. And if something needs to be deprioritized or be put on hold, you can hold it with the understanding that will, be on hold and will not get done, because now you're working on something else that took higher priority, because that's life, right? That happens. But that is that handshake and that understanding that we will take care of the fire drill. However, these other, 3-4 things that are, if you do agile right, you have your story points, right? So you do have an item that is, 13 or 24, and in level of effort, right? You can take it out of your sprint and then put something else. Not ideal, not ideal, but it happens. And you're able to be transparent about it, which I like.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Agile isn't restricting you to following a certain methodology and only doing it that way. It's not restrictive. It's actually,
That's right.
it does have the ability to be fluid. And if it means that, oh, we have to change a lot of things, well, then you have to change a lot of things. But I think what it does afford is that it stops people coming in. It gets a better understanding on those stakeholders' part about what you're actually doing and why it's important not to throw another crocodile at you at this moment in time, because they probably gave you a bunch of priorities that everybody agreed was the right thing to focus on. And they now have a better understanding that's what you should be working on. Now, if things change and everybody agrees, you all sit down and you say, oh, well, those were the old priorities and these are the new ones and we have to change it. That's okay. You've got the flexibility to do that. But I think it forestalls and has a better understanding amongst the stakeholders, and it also gives the marketer the ability to have that conversation, whereas before the conversation was, I have some work for you. Oh, okay, I'll go and do it. And not talking about, oh, well, that means that other 5 things that we were going to do for you are now not going to be done, but we just assume that the thing that you just gave to me, the most recent one, is the most important because you just gave it to me. So
That's right.
Yeah, I mean that's
right.
And well, in some ways, it's kind of bizarre. I think in a way. I mean, I think Agile is sort of perfectly suited for marketers. I mean, we're supposed to be really good communicators, but as Agile,
we're human.
Right? We're human. We're not perfect. We talked about that. So I think it really affords that ability for marketers to be much more honest about what's going on in the back room.
That's right. So that goes along the lines. I mean, you mentioned the Agile manifesto, marketing manifesto, and that it goes along the lines of that flexibility as opposed to a rigid planning. I had a conversation kind of recently with someone in my organization who was reaching out because, it's marketing planning time for us marketers. And there was a sense of, okay, how do we make marketing planning a little bit more agile? So person reached out and we're trying to understand, okay, what is your definition of agile marketing, and trying to understand what that is, and then how do we implement that into marketing planning. And that flexibility is key, right, in marketing planning. And the first thing I told him was there is no right way of doing agile. This is really a guiding principle. And, let's not scare the teams. They can choose how to implement them at the very basic, right? And then you can start getting a little bit more sophisticated with, I mentioned story points. You can start sprinting. You can start doing your ceremonies. You can do, select which ceremonies you want to start and which ones you would kind of warm yourself into. It is not a rigid thing. It's not something that you have to do it this way. There are many opinions out there. I'm of the opinion that if you follow the principles and you choose how to implement them, then you can grow with them. You and your team can grow into liking it, because you will, I promise you. And then you can get better and better at it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think marketers should fear to tread in this direction and try it out and think that, oh no, I'm going to be locked in doing things a certain way. Really, what it is a process, but it's really a way of communicating. It's a way of talking about and giving everyone a safe space, if you will, for talking about what needs to get done and what shouldn't get done at any point in time. And that's a really helpful tool, I think. It's less about, the lists and the priorities, although those are important. It's more about the communication. That's really what it's about, both for the team and then also those stakeholders that are out there. So it looks as if our time's drawing to a close. Any other thoughts, Giannina, before we close up?
Well, lots of thoughts, but I think at the end, if for the listeners, if they really want to dive in, I know that there are tools out there, literature written. They can definitely check out agilemarketingmanifesto.org to kind of go through the manifesto itself. I think it will answer a lot of the things that we have touched on today. And I would encourage everybody, just get out there and do your research. a lot of literature has been published and lots of opinions. I go back to a few websites that I think that have had the time to kind of, munch in on the concept for a long time and able to kind of grow again and continue to add more content to it. And then yes, there are different frameworks that we can implement, Scrum, Kanban. I mean, there information is out there that we can certainly use and start educating ourselves.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks so much. This has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it helps the listeners out there starting out. Thanks for joining us today on the deep dive into Agile marketing with John Cass. My thanks to Giannina, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing Podcast. Be sure and subscribe to our show and leave a review to let us know what you thought of today's episode. And if you like what you heard and want to learn more, visit www.businessagility.institute.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.